It was a beautiful sunny day, and the promise of a wonderful fall was in the air. Half of the trees along the city park had turned red, orange, and yellow, and the other half were still green. My morning had gone as well as it could. It was my 30th birthday, and 3 of my coworkers surprised me with an offer to go out to lunch, and my supervisor told me to take the rest of the day off. I decided to take a walk after I left the restaurant instead of going back to our empty apartment. That's why I found myself walking through the park and why I was on the corner of Main and Pine when it caught my eye. In a trash can at the edge of the park was a bunch of flowers. It wasn't just a bunch. An almost gaudy arrangement of red roses, yellow irises, purple larkspur, and 4 flowers I couldn't identify, all lying in the dumpster. I crossed the street and walked into a cute outdoor cafe. There were 2 vacant tables overlooking the park. I sat at the table closest to the street, ordered a Campari Negroni, and watched people walk by the dumpster. A few people did a double take as they passed the bouquet, and some even stopped and went back to take a closer look. No one touched the flowers, although one lady took a picture of them on her cell phone. I sipped my cocktail slowly, watching as a man in a business suit stopped, shook his head, then moved on. He was a good-looking young man, probably my age, a little overweight, maybe 175 centimeters tall. My thoughts began to wander. John Farnsworth couldn't help but marvel at the lucky streak he'd had lately. 5 years out of grad school, 5 years busting his ass at the bank, and today he was called into the president's office and told that the board of directors had elected him vice president. He almost started laughing, thinking it was some kind of prank. But of course, Mr. Jackson never joked about such things. This was for real. The vice president, 3 months before his 29th birthday. It had to be a record. And for real, according to his administrative assistant, Miss Barnes, who had been with the bank since its inception in 1989. John walked out of Mr. Jackson's office and made a decision. This day had come. He had been dating Michelle for 6 months now. 5 of those months they had slept together and exclusively with each other, and had exchanged the words, "I love you," shortly before they had sex for the first time. John sometimes found it hard to believe that a woman as beautiful, intelligent, and charming as Michelle was his girlfriend. Plus, she had been such a wonderful influence on John. She never complained about the extra time John spent at the office, always willing to go and do something at a moment's notice, and she encouraged him to be his best. Her encouragement brought him back to the gym. In the last 6 months, John had lost 9 pounds and looked his best since wrestling in high school. He planned to lose another 5 pounds before buying some new suits. His current closet made John look a little overweight. John called Michelle at the office and asked if she was free for lunch. "I have some great news, and I need to ask you a question." "You're not going to give me a clue?" "No, just meet me at Sullivan's in the park." "Oh, a riddle. I love it. And I love you, baby. I'll see you at noon." At 12:30, John left his office. Miss Barnes couldn't contain her smile as John walked past her desk whistling a tune. It was one of his mother's favorite Beatles tunes that Paul sang, "Michelle." John looked briefly into the flower store in the first-floor lobby. "I want a bouquet. Something special for a very special lady." With bouquet in hand, John floated down the street, still whistling a tune and letting his imagination run wild. What would the next year bring? The next decade? The next 50 years? John's parents had recently celebrated their 35-year anniversary and were still madly in love. John could easily imagine himself and Michelle 35 years from now, sharing life, love, children. There she was. Michelle was already sitting at a table outside. As John approached the restaurant, Michelle waved at him. When she saw the huge bouquet of flowers, her smile grew even wider. John was the sweetest, most generous man or guy Michelle had ever dated. He always did both small and big things to make her feel loved. John walked over to the table and leaned over to kiss her. Michelle reached for the bouquet. "For me?" John jerked his hand away. "Not yet, no," and sat down in the chair across from her. A little while later. "First, I'd like to introduce you to the new vice president of First Bank." Michelle understood immediately. "Oh, John, that's fantastic." She squeezed his hand. "I'm so happy for you. Congratulations. Getting the Sullivan account put me over the top. Mr. Jackson said the board wanted to let me know how much I was appreciated. Michelle smiled again. So, that's my big news. Now my question. The waiter chose that exact moment to appear at their table and asked John if he could get him something to drink. Michelle was already sipping a glass of white wine. Yes, please bring us a bottle of champagne. We're celebrating tonight. My boyfriend got some great news today, said Michelle to the waiter before he turned away. We're celebrating more than just my promotion. John gathered flowers from the table and handed them to Michelle. We can pick out a ring together later. Let this bouquet be a symbol of that. Michelle, will you marry me? Seconds stretched in an incredibly uncomfortable vacuum of silence as John waited for Michelle's answer, and Michelle stared at John, wondering what words would do the least harm. Finally, not knowing how to put it best, she simply told him the truth. John, I don't love you that much. That was all it took. In less than a minute, John's world turned upside down, from the highest heights to the deepest depths. Perhaps he'd misheard her. But you told me you loved me. We've slept together for the last 4 months. You told me how happy I made you. What am I missing here? That's all true, John, but I would never love you enough to be your wife. I'd always feel I settled down early and didn't wait long enough for the right man. We'd be miserable and eventually divorced, I guarantee it. As soon as the words settled down flew from her lips, Michelle realized it was the wrong choice. Michelle's words reached John's ears and penetrated his brain, but he couldn't understand them. Settled down, unhappy, divorced, never loved you enough. Just last night, this woman was sleeping with him, telling him she loved him, all the while bouncing up and down. See, that was another reason John knew they were made for each other. The sex was just so damn good. The waiter had brought the champagne and was about to open it. Wait! John got up from the table. We've changed our minds. John pulled all the cash out of his wallet, $82, and held it out to the waiter. This is on account of her drinks and your tip. I suppose the champagne can be returned since it hasn't been opened? Excuse me. The waiter accepted the cash and nodded. Thank you. Not knowing what else to say. Obviously something had gone wrong. John took the flowers and turned to leave. The waiter wasn't the only one who didn't know what to say. John wondered, was a simple goodbye appropriate? He couldn't call her a bitch. She had never promised him anything. He just assumed she loved him as much as he loved her. John was on his way out of the fenced hall when Michelle shouted after him, "Can I keep the flowers?" No. He crossed the street and stuffed the bouquet into the trash can, right on top of all the other trash that people left there, fast food bags, soda cans, even a damaged umbrella that someone had thrown away after the morning downpour. Michelle called John the next day. She tried everything she could to make up with him. Couldn't they continue to be friends for their own benefit? Would he meet her one evening for dinner sometime in the near future? John's answer to every inquiry was the same. I can't imagine it will happen. Nothing will change. I will always want more out of our relationship than what you want. Better to end it now before you end up leaving me for a guy you really want to marry. They did meet up a few times after that day, but only for the purpose of exchanging things left at each other's apartments. The city is big enough that they could live their separate lives and never see each other again. One afternoon, John was sitting in a tavern when the husband of one of Michelle's girlfriends walked in. John had always liked the guy and offered to buy him a beer. They got to talking, and eventually John had to ask. I guess I was always afraid to ask her. Maybe you know. What did Michelle mean when she told me she would settle down if she accepted my proposal? Michelle had fallen victim to her preconceived notions of Prince Charming. He paused for a moment before deciding to continue. John, you look just like me. Neither of us are tall, dark-haired, and handsome. We're a solid 7-8 on a scale of 1 to 10. I'm lucky my wife loves me for who I am. Find yourself a woman who doesn't pay attention to all that crap and loves you for the same reasons. There are plenty of women like my Jennifer. I lost almost 9 pounds while I was dating Michelle, but I will never be over 175 centimeters in me. If it's any consolation, Michelle has told Jen several times how much she misses you. Told Jen all about your wonderful qualities. She just couldn't shake the image of the perfect couple that had formed in her head. That's her loss. 5 years later, John saw Michelle at an outdoor concert. John's wife was standing next to him as they waited for his wife's bag to go through the security screening system. She noticed that John was staring intently at the brunette. "Do you know someone?" His wife's voice seemed to shake him. "Remember I told you about how I once proposed and got turned down?" "Yeah, why? Is that her?" "Yeah. She's beautiful. Do you want to come over and say hi?" "No, I'd feel like I was just rubbing it in." "Rubbing what in?" "I'm here for you. The fact that she said no, and I obviously gave up when I met you and married you. Now, most wives, upon hearing a line like that, would call it bullshit. But John's wife knew John well enough to realize that he was being completely honest. He really thought he had married the most beautiful woman in the world. She hugged John, thinking of how happy he would be when she told him the news later that evening at the hotel. John is going to be a daddy. The waiter came over to see if I wanted something else to drink. The sun was still warming. My glass was empty, and I still had nowhere to go. "Why not?" I glanced across the street just in time to spot a very attractive lady doing what so many others before her were doing, looking at the bouquet and stopping before moving on. Once again, my imagination played out. Alexis Walker, née North, has spent the last hour contemplating whether or not she should start smoking again. She only quit smoking because Matt insisted he wouldn't marry her until she quit that filthy habit. So to please Matt, she decided to quit smoking with a nicotine patch. Too bad Matt couldn't give up his bad habits. Matt was a lover of flirting. It didn't seem like such a bad habit when they dated in college. Each of their friends seemed lively and fun, and flirting was just part of it. It never got any further than dancing and the occasional kiss or pat on the butt. But like so many things, the transition from college life to family, adult life brought changes. Fewer and fewer of their male friends were willing to let their wives be groped. Women began to get defensive when some young person pressed her husband to her lips. What hadn't changed was Matt. Alexis and Matt were married the second year after graduation. They were one of the few couples whose relationship survived after college. The problem was that relationship and marriage would soon join the rest of the past tense. Alexis sat in the cafe fighting the urge to smoke. It would taste so good with that cup of coffee. What's more harmful, a large pastry or a cigarette? The lawyer she had hired this morning would have the papers ready to serve on Matt in 2 days. Alexis sat on the patio drinking decaf coffee, wondering if she could ask the guy at the next table for a cigarette, and watched the trees across the street shake water off their leaves after the morning rain. Alexis could put up with the flirting, but not the cheating. 2 years after their wedding, Alexis caught Matt for the first time. He had that little slut from across the yard. The little bitch strutted around her apartment with those sheer curtains as the only covering on the windows. The lights were on in the room, and her silhouette played across the curtains. Sometimes in the daylight, she didn't even bother to draw the curtains as she strolled casually naked through her apartment. At the pool, she wore her tightest bikinis. Once at her apartment's patio party, she wore ultra-short denim shorts and a white t-shirt. A dog like her husband couldn't resist. 3 months after the bitch moved into the complex, she made sure Alexis knew she was sleeping with Matt. Matt was too stupid to realize that the bitch had set him up. When Alexis confronted Matt face-to-face, he apologized to all hells, made every promise known to man that it would never happen again, and begged Alexis to forgive him. Every week, bouquets of flowers were brought to both her apartment and office until Alexis finally gave in. But first, get your ass tested for diseases. No one knows where that slut was or who was with her. Matt took the test and came back clean. Alexis let Matt back into their bed. Alexis knew the bitch's game. Matt wasn't the standout stud in the bedroom. He couldn't be anything other than average size, and his talents didn't exceed his size. No, the bitch just needed to prove her superiority by sleeping with any husband she could and then accuse his wife of infidelity. Against Alexis's better judgment, she forgave him. She loved the bastard, but made it clear as day that any further transgressions were unforgivable. Even made him sign a prenup. Matt knew he'd dodged a bullet. It had all started when the blonde had crossed the yard and started her exhibitions, driving him crazy. And here Matt was being dishonest with himself again. Perhaps he couldn't help it. He was being dishonest with everyone. His sinfulness didn't start with this blonde. Almost every woman he'd met along the way had given Matt some reason to be aroused. It was just that the blonde was more accessible than the others. The shadows on the sheer curtains first caught his eye a week after she moved in. Matt almost said something out loud to Alexis as he sat on their back porch. But he kept his mouth shut and was at the store the next day buying better binoculars. He started spending more time on the veranda, watching and waiting. A light would come on in the blonde's window, and if he could get away with it, for example, if Alexis was busy in the study, he would run inside and watch from one of the darkened rooms. Through binoculars, he could make out that she was naked. A third time, he could make out that she was lying on the bed. It was like his own personalized show. The day of the comprehensive barbecue was the most memorable. She seemed to take every opportunity to flaunt her beauty in front of him. Like a trout caught on a barbed hook, Matt was dead. Despite her best efforts, it took the blonde 3 tries for Alexis to catch her and her husband. The blonde almost gave up after the second session in her bedroom. Damn, how the hell was this woman putting up with this? So the first time with Matt was a bust. She didn't get caught. The second round wasn't much better. Same scenario, same premature ooze. If she didn't hate Alexis so much, she'd drop it right here and now. Why did she hate Alexis? From the moment she first saw her, she hated her. Alexis was blessed with a slim body and long, trim legs. Not giving credit to Alexis's excellent diet and running 30 to 40 kilometers a week plus all those laps in the pool. Alexis had so many friends, the result of Alexis's hard work to overcome her shyness and tendency to be introverted. And most of all about how Matt was just going on and on about how lucky he was to be married to her. On their third session, she made sure to screw Matt in his own bed. That's how they got caught. What a dumb ass. Worst of all, when Alexis discovered that Matt was cheating on her, Alexis eventually forgave the slut and took him back. Which Alexis did. Not that it was easy. It took Matt 2 weeks to get back to the apartment and over a month before they shared a bed again. For the next year, Matt did everything he could to convince Alexis that his cheating days were over. Alexis cautiously opened her heart to Matt, forgiving him and doing her best to forget his cheating. Alexis shouldn't have been surprised when, a little over a year later, she found out that he was cheating again. The surprise was more about how she found out. Matt was playing golf when the doorbell rang. Opening the door, she looked up to see a young girl standing in front of it. "Are you Alexis?" "Yes." Alexis expected the girl to ask if she wanted to buy Girl Scout cookies or something, but why would this young girl want to know her name? "Can I talk to you, please?" "Go ahead. It's kind of personal. Can I come in?" Alexis looked behind the girl's back. She'd heard of a scam where some thug comes in behind the girl. She didn't see anyone and unlocked the door. She locked the door as soon as the girl crossed the threshold. "What can I do for you?" The girl took a deep breath. "You can let Matthew go. Give him a divorce." Alexis almost went into shock and barely spoke out. "Excuse me? Why don't you let Matthew go? If you loved him as much as you should, you'd want him to be happy and you'd let him go." "I'll make him happy." If Alexis had been watching this scene on some trashy romance show, it might have seemed crazy and funny, but this was her life, damn it, not some TV show. A cauldron of hot lava was bubbling inside Alexis, but she needed answers and she kept her cool. Despite that, Alexis couldn't help herself and asked, "How old are you?" The girl seemed hurt by the question, but answered, "I will be 19 next month." Alexis didn't say it out loud, but she thought, 18 too bad. A year younger and I could have put his ass in jail. Alexis needed to keep the conversation going, so she turned on her phone's voice recorder. She almost asked if the girl wanted a glass of wine, but remembered that she was too young to drink. "Can I get you a Coke?" Lacey, that was her name, thought it was going pretty well. She was expecting to see a hysterical megger from the way Matt had described her. Instead, she's offering a Coke. Alexis returned to the room with a Coke for Lacey and a glass of wine for herself. 20 minutes later, Alexis's patience broke. Lacey left, and Alexis's phone was filled with messages of who, Lacey Brown, where they met. Lacey works at Tremors, a local knockoff of Hooters. How long it's been going on? 2 months. And what? Alexis could have done without hearing how wonderful it was when Lacey and Matt made love, but now had it all on the recorder. By the time she left, Lacey had gotten Alexis's promise that Matt would be free soon. Alexis pulled herself together, packed a bag, and drove to her sister Haley's house. As soon as she walked through the door, Alexis fainted and sobbed for the next hour while her sister hugged her. Haley's heart clenched as Alexis's shoulders shook uncontrollably, telling her about Matt's misdeeds. Haley had never known the first woman and wished Matt would walk through the door. More than anything, she wanted to kick his ass for what he'd done to her little sister. It was a Sunday. Her sister had called a friend who was recently divorced. By Monday morning, Alexis had an appointment with an attorney for Wednesday. Now, after their meeting with the attorney, she was optimistic, considering all that would happen after the divorce, and Matt would be served the papers on Friday. Alexis finished her cup of coffee and was ready to head home. It was time to pack a few more things from home when she looked up and saw Matt standing with a large bouquet of flowers. "Come home, Alexis, I'm sorry, so sorry." Alexis walked out of the cafe and crossed the street. Matt followed her. "What can I do to make it up to you?" Alexis stopped and reached for the bouquet. Matt was stunned, thinking to himself, could it really be that simple? Maybe she really does love me enough to forgive me a second time. Alexis took the flowers, sniffed the bouquet, and tossed it in the trash can. "You can shove your flowers up your ass and never speak to me again. Then you and little Miss Tiny Bopper can discover love together. You can take her to the latest boy band concert and drink Coke together while she shakes her boobs in your face." Alexis took a deep breath. "You make me sick!" Alexis jumped into a cab and asked the cabbie to drive 2 blocks to the parking garage where her car was parked, giving the cabbie a decent tip for the short ride. Alexis drove back to her sister's house, changed into her gym clothes, and jogged a few kilometers. By the time she got home, her sister and brother-in-law Kyle were home. Alexis told them about the meeting with the lawyer, the public fight with Matt, and the fact that he would be served with divorce papers on Friday. Her brother-in-law noticed this, interrupting her. "Wait, Matt met you at the coffee shop with flowers. How did he know where to find you?" "Oh my God, I never thought of that." "Let me see your cell phone." Kyle pressed a few buttons. "Did you know you have a tracking app on your phone?" "I didn't install it." "Matt probably did. Probably to make sure you weren't following him when he met his teenage girlfriend, or maybe to track if you were doing to him what he was doing to you. That's the problem with cheaters. If you can't be sure of your fidelity, how can you trust your other half?" While they were talking, Kyle was busy on Alexis's cell phone. "There, all deleted. Matt was served on Friday. He called Alexis at least every other day. He apologized and promised to be faithful for the rest of their life together." Alexis didn't give up the second time, and 6 months later the divorce was final. But not before Matt's attorney requested, and the judge ordered 3 sessions of psychological counseling for the couple. The psychological counseling sessions were positive for Alexis. She learned that Matt's serial adultery had nothing to do with her. After all, it had more to do with Matt's lack of self-esteem than her lack of love for him. His whole manly character was compensation for the bullying he had endured as a child, from his brother, schoolmates, and others. His first high school girlfriend dumped him shortly after they first made love and started dating his former best friend. Poor guy ends up dating, courting, and marrying Alexis, a truly beautiful woman. Beautiful inside and out. He never realizes he's won the heart of a wonderful, loyal, loving woman, and their breakup is a self-fulfilling prophecy because of his subsequent actions. Matt would still be married to Alexis if he just believed in her. It was a year later. 6 months after her divorce was finalized. Alexis never smoked that first cigarette. Alexis's sister called one afternoon with an invitation to dinner on Saturday night. "Dress comfortably but nicely. I have a friend I work with at the bank. His name is John, who you should meet." "Another one of your setups?" "This guy's different. You'll like him. He's smart, successful, and not overconfident." That sounds like the male equivalent of, outstanding personality. Alexis laughed when she said that, but agreed to attend. The dinner party was a success, and Alexis accepted John's invitation to go to the show and dinner the following weekend. John Farnsworth rang the bell, holding a bouquet of fall asters in his hand. Alexis opened the door wearing a beautiful navy blue dress and 10-inch heels. As John entered the house, he met his gaze with Alexis's stunning blue eyes. "You look amazing." Alexis took the bouquet in one hand and played with John's lapel with the other. "And you look very dapper yourself. Let me put this in some water." John was almost embarrassed, watching Alexis's shapely ass in that dress as she left for the kitchen. "And those legs are outstanding." As John helped Alexis put on her coat, she decided to get rid of it right away, so she asked, "I'm wearing heels. Is that going to be a problem?" John was a little surprised by the question and wondered if he had time to turn in those damn theater tickets if she was trying to back out of their date. Perhaps she regretted accepting his invitation now that she was standing next to him. "No, I like looking into your eyes this way. Would it be a problem if you were accompanied by a guy my height? Look, I'm sorry, I dated a guy about your height last month, and he asked me to wear ballet flats. I didn't even think about it until you came to the door. I just didn't want to be a bitch. I suck at dating. Ask my sister, she'll tell you." John laughed, though he wondered if that made her feel even more awkward. This whole thing was too ridiculous. "Okay, can we start over?" Alexis blushed. "Yes, please. Let's go, or we'll be late." John took her hand and led her to his car, holding the door for her. John headed downtown, looking back at Alexis. "Do you have a problem with dating a guy my height? Especially a guy who likes the way your feet look in those heels?" Alexis realized why her sister was so eager to set her up with this guy. He was straightforward and confident, but without arrogance. "My ex-husband was 5'5" and a cheating asshole. What are you?" 5'10", and you seem like a great guy." "I'm a great guy, but at 5'10", thank you." John said it as a joke. "But it wasn't enough for my last serious relationship. She needed more height." "Well, she sounds just as stupid as my ex." "Maybe we should introduce them to each other. Only if we castrate them first so they can't procreate. There are enough stupid people in the world." John was beginning to like this woman. At dinner after the show, John ended up telling her about his failed marriage proposal. Alexis reached out and squeezed John's hand. "It's awful, but at least you found out before you walked down the aisle." 3 years into our relationship, I realized that behind all his bravado was a scared little boy who needed constant affirmation of his worth, especially sexually. After his second indiscretion, at least the second one I learned about, it was time to cut my losses. So here I am. I'm 24 and divorced. I've dated 4 men since my divorce, and I'm so socially awkward that I almost derailed the best date of my life with my stupid comment about my heels. Can you ever forgive me? Now it was John's turn to reach out and take Alexis's palm. He found it hard to believe that this gorgeous woman with such a kind heart was asking for his forgiveness. Alexis looked across the table and somehow knew, this is the man I'm going to marry. We're going to have children, and we're going to grow old together. It was the beginning of a beautiful relationship. 7 months later, on a warm spring night, John asked Alexis if she would marry him. Alexis wrapped her arms around John's neck and said yes before kissing him passionately. 2 months later, a district judge wed Alexis North to John Farnsworth in an intimate ceremony on the lawn behind his parents' home. Their children were born, and they have lived happily ever after ever since.